Chaz Princeton, the familial disappointment of games. From trust fund prep school bully to comedy sidekick to professional player, this fan-favorite rival had an eclectic path on the road to greatness. So today, we're going to be taking a look at a modern deck profile, exploring the cards that he might be using if he were still dueling today. Now, Chaz is an interesting character to build a deck for, in that he runs several different archetypes and deck setups across various pieces of media, so finding synergy amongst all of them can be a unique challenge. But to start, let's remember the friends who were always there for him, even when he didn't want them to be, starting with Ojama Yellow, Ojama Black, and Ojama Green. These three Stooges-esque spirits were a strange group of companions, but they stuck by him through thick and thin, and there's no doubt in my mind that he'd be stuck with them to this very day. But the Ojama family has grown since the old days, so we'll say that somewhere along the lines, he met the likes of Ojama Red, Ojama Pink, and Ojama Blue. And aren't they a friendly-looking bunch? Ojama Red allows its user to special summon up to 4 more Ojama monsters from the hand when it's normal summoned. Ojama Pink's effect is activated when it's sent from the hand or field to the grave. Each player draws and then discards 1 card, and if you discarded an Ojama card, you can make an unused monster zone on your enemy's field inactive until the end of their turn. And Ojama Blue lets you add 2 Ojama cards from the deck to the hand when it goes to the graveyard by battle. Then we have the Union Machine monsters, with those being V Tiger Jet, W Wing Catapult, X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, and Z Metal Tank. This is an archetype that Chaz shares with Seto Kaiba, which you'll have noticed if you saw last week's Kaiba deck profile. These monsters combine Voltron style to bring out more powerful monsters. X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, and Z Metal Tank were the original 3 combiners. Then they added W Wing Catapult and V Tiger Jet. W Wing Catapult's effect lets you either equip or unequip this card to V Tiger Jet, and it boosts any monster that it's equipped to by 400 attack and defense points, and can be destroyed in their place if attacked or targeted by a destruction effect. So its main effect lets it equip itself to V Tiger Jet, but if it ends up equipped to another monster somehow, which is very possible in this deck profile, that other monster still gets all the benefits that V Tiger Jet normally does. Next up, we have 2 more Union monsters, Union Pilot and Union Driver. Like W Wing Catapult, these 2 can equip to other monsters and will be destroyed in their place if they lose a battle or are destroyed by card effects. When Union Pilot is acting as an equip spell card, it can be returned to the hand in order to unbanish a Union monster and equip it instead, at which point Pilot is special summoned back to the field. And Driver can be banished from the spell zone to equip a level 4 or lower Union monster in the deck to the card that it was equipped to instead. That brings us to Chaz's other main archetype from the anime, the Armed Dragon family. This is a series of monsters that level up over time, and Chaz originally ran Armed Dragon levels 3, 5, 7, and 10, which have all been upgraded to Armed Dragon Thunder levels 3, 5, 7, and 10. But all of these cards share the effect that their name becomes their original versions when they're on the field or in the grave. So Armed Dragon Thunder level 3 is still called Armed Dragon level 3 when it's on the field. Same with 5 through 10. Level 3 has 2 once per turn effects. It lets you draw a card if it's sent to the grave to activate a dragon monster's effect, including its own, which is just a huge old coinky-dink because its second effect lets you discard a monster to tribute this card and special summon a level 5 or lower Armed Dragon monster. And that would probably be Armed Dragon Thunder level 5. It has the same level up effect as level 3, being used to bring out level 7, and if it's destroyed by a dragon monster's card effect, including its own, you can add a level 5 or higher Wind Dragon monster from the deck to the hand. That brings us to level 7. It also discards a monster to tribute itself to summon the next level, and if it's discarded to use a dragon monster's effect, you can add an Armed Dragon card from the deck to the hand. And then there's level 10. This guy only has its effects if it was summoned using another Armed Dragon monster's effect, and if it has attack points. If it has at least 1 attack point, its name becomes Armed Dragon level 10. If it has at least 10 attack points, it can't switch to your opponent's control for any reason. If it has at least 100 attack points, it can't be destroyed by battle, and if it has 1,000 attack points, it gains a quick effect to discard 1 card to destroy any other card on the field, and if it succeeds, this monster gains 1,000 attack points at that point. So essentially, because this guy normally has 3,000 attack points, these are all the effects that it would normally have. But if you get him up to 10,000 attack points, he can destroy all other cards on the field once per turn. But if you think that's the end of the Armed Dragons in this deck, you would be wrong. We've also got Knight Armed Dragon, the Armored Knight Dragon, and Pile Armed Dragon. The one with the unnecessarily long name can be special summoned from the hand if you special summon a level 5 or higher dragon monster. If this guy is special summoned, it can match its attribute and level to one of your banished dragon monsters. If Knight Armed Dragon is sent to the grave, you can boost one of your dragon monster's attack points by 1000, and neither player can activate card effects in response to this. Pile Armed Dragon can be special summoned by discarding a Wind Dragon or a level 7 or higher dragon monster. It can also send an armed dragon monster in the hand or deck to the grave, and then boost another monster on your field by 300 points for each level of that armed dragon monster until the end of the turn. But you can only attack with one monster for that turn. And to round out the Armed Dragon family, we have Armed Dragon level 10, White. This guy can only be summoned by its own effect, which is to banish Armed Dragon monsters whose combined levels equal 10 from the field or grave in order to summon itself. When you do, it can also add White Veil from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, this monster prevents you from taking damage, and when it attacks, you can destroy one card on the field. Now to support the Armed Dragons, we're also going to give Chaz 2 Wind Attribute Dragon Ruler cards, with those being Lightning, Dragon Ruler of Drafts, and Tempest, Dragon Ruler of Storms. Lightning lets you discard itself and a dragon or wind monster to special summon Tempest, an effect that would activate most of the Armed Dragon monster's search effects. Meanwhile, Tempest can also discard itself and a wind monster, but it lets you add a dragon monster from your deck to your hand. It can also banish a total of 2 dragon and or wind monsters from the hand and or grave to special summon itself from the hand or graveyard. If this monster was special summoned, it's returned to your hand during your opponent's end phase. And last, if this card is banished, you can add a wind dragon monster to your hand. And the last 2 monsters in this lineup are actually derived from Chazz's Manga deck profile. Say hello to Light End Sublimation Dragon and Dark End Evaporation Dragon. They both share the effect that you can banish a level 8 dragon monster from the extra deck to special summon themselves, though this prevents you from special summoning anything but dragon monsters for the rest of the turn. Both can also be used to fusion summon in place of a polymerization card. Light End Sublimation Dragon can give up 500 attack and defense points to weaken an attacking enemy monster by 1500 attack and defense points, while Dark End Evaporation Dragon can give up 500 attack and defense points to destroy an attack position monster on the field once per turn. And those are our monsters. Certainly an eclectic bunch, but honestly, any group that includes the Ojamas is. Moving on to spells and traps, I'm going to group these by overall archetype. Normally I do all the traps after the spells, but for this time, I'm just going to do all the Ojama cards, then the Union cards, and so on and so forth. So, trigger warning if seeing green and purple on the screen at the same time is startling to you. First, we have the Ojama support, including Ojamagic, Ojama Country, and Ojama Duo. Ojamagic is a spell card that allows you to add Ojama's yellow, green, and black to the hand when it's sent to the grave from either the field or the hand. Ojama Country is a field spell that lets you discard an Ojama card to resurrect another Ojama in the grave once per turn. And, if you control an Ojama monster while this card is on the field, all monsters flip their attack and defense points. Ojama Duo special summons 2 Ojama tokens to your opponent's field in defense position. They can't be tributed, and your opponent automatically loses 300 life points when they're destroyed. This card can also be banished from the grave to special summon 2 different Ojama monsters in your deck. There's also Obedience Schooled, which isn't specifically an Ojama card, but for the purposes of this deck profile, it might as well be. If you control no monsters, special summon 3 level 2 or lower beast-type effect monsters with different names from your deck without their effects, and they're destroyed at the end of the turn. When this card is activated, you can only special summon beast monsters for the rest of the turn. The next 3 Ojama support cards actually pull double duty, having the Ojama support one of Chazz's other archetypes. So we've got Ojama Assimilation, Ojamatch, and Ojama Pajama. Ojama Assimilation supports the Union monsters, allowing you to reveal a Light Machine fusion monster in the extra deck and banish any number of Ojama monsters from the hand, field, or grave so that you can special summon the same number of fusion materials that are listed on the machine that you revealed. This card can then be banished from the grave to shuffle up to 3 of your banished Ojamas back into the deck and then draw a card. Ojamatch supports the Armed Dragon cards. You can send an Ojama in your hand or on your field to the grave and add a different Ojama and an Armed Dragon monster from the deck or the grave to your hand. Then normal summon one of those 2 monsters. Like Ojama Assimilation, this card can be banished from the grave to shuffle up to 3 of your banished Ojamas back into the deck and then draw a card. And Ojama Pajama is a continuous trap that supports both Union monsters and Armed Dragon monsters, essentially allowing you to banish an Ojama card from your hand, field, or grave to prevent either a Union machine or an Armed Dragon from being destroyed by battle or card effect. During the main phase, you can discard a card to add an Ojama card to the hand from the deck, And if this card is sent to the grave, it lets you special summon as many banished Ojamas as you have space for on the field. Moving on to Union support, we have Union Hanger, Union Scramble, and Unauthorized Reactivation. Union Hanger is a field spell that lets you add a light attribute Machine Union monster from the deck to the hand. Then, once per turn, if a monster meeting that description is summoned to your field, you can equip it with another light attribute Machine Union monster with a different name in your deck. Union Scramble special summons up to 3 banished light normal or Union Machine monsters to your field. During either player's turn, this card can be banished from the grave to return a banished normal or Union Light Machine monster to your hand, though this can't occur the same turn that this card ended up in the grave. And Unauthorized Reactivation targets one of your machine monsters and equips an appropriate Union Machine monster from your hand or deck to it. But that equipped monster can't be special summoned to a monster zone for the rest of the turn. For the Armed Dragons, we have Armed Dragon Lightning, Armed Dragon Thunderbolt, and White Veil. Armed Dragon Lightning is a continuous spell that can be destroyed in place of an Armed Dragon monster on your field. While it's on the field, it can boost an Armed Dragon monster's attack points by 100 for each of its levels, or it can add an Armed Dragon with an equal or lower level back to your hand from the grave. Armed Dragon Thunderbolt is a trap that boosts an Armed Dragon monster's attack points by 1000 for each Armed Dragon in the grave, but your opponent doesn't take battle damage for the rest of this turn. This card can be banished from the grave to return an Armed Dragon spell card in your graveyard to your hand. And White Veil is an equipped spell that prevents your opponent from activating spells or traps when the equipped monster attacks. When the equipped monster battles, face-up enemy spells and traps are negated during the battle. If the equipped monster destroys an enemy monster, you can destroy all of your enemy's spells and trap cards. But unfortunately, when this card leaves the field, its owner takes 3,000 points of damage, so watch yourself with that one. And the only Light and Darkness support is Dragon's Light and Darkness, which lets you activate one of 3 effects. You can add a level 8 dragon monster in your deck to your hand, and then shuffle a different attribute level 8 dragon monster in your hand into the deck. You can give a dragon on your field 200 attack points for each of its levels, or you can negate an effect targeting one of your dragon monsters. So this one can pull double duty supporting the Armed Dragon monsters as well as the Light and Darkness dragons in this profile. And last, we just have 2 generic spells, Polymerization and Instant Fusion. Polymerization is your bog standard fusion card, and Instant Fusion lets you pay 1000 life points to immediately summon a level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, but it can't attack and it's destroyed during your end phase. That does it for the main deck. Moving on to the side deck, we have a few more Ojama cards like Ojama Muscle, Ojama Trio, and Ojama Delta Hurricane. Muscle is used when you have the extra deck monster Ojama King on the field. It allows you to destroy all of your other Ojamas in order to give Ojama King 1000 attack points for each one that you destroyed. Ojama Trio works like Ojama Duo, summoning tokens that burn your enemy to their side of their field, but there's 3 of them. The trade-off, however, is that you don't get any Ojamas back to your field the same way that you do with Ojama Duo. And Ojama Delta Hurricane requires Ojamas yellow, green, and black to all be on your field and destroys all cards on the enemy's field. For the Armed Dragons, we have Armed Dragon Flash, an extra support spell that lets you special summon a level 3 Armed Dragon monster from the deck in defense position. Frontline Base supports the Union monsters, allowing you to special summon one from your hand. We've also got 2 Chthonian cards as an acknowledgement of Chazz's first Hell-themed deck, with those being Chthonian Polymer and Chthonian Blast. Polymer is a trap card that activates when your enemy fusion summons, allowing you to take control of their newly fused monster. And Blast is a trap card that's activated when one of your monsters is destroyed. It destroys the monster on the field with the lowest attack points, and then it hits both players for half of those attack points in damage. We also have 2 standalone cards that just happen to synergize well in this profile, Digusto Emerald and Aegeon the Sea Castrum. Emerald is a rank 4 Xyz monster that can detach a material to either shuffle 3 cards in your grave back into the deck and draw 1 card, or it can special summon a non-effect monster in the grave. And Aegeon the Sea Castrum is a rank 8 Xyz monster that can banish a random card from the enemy extra deck in order to steal its attack points. During either player's turn, this card can detach a material to target one banished enemy fusion, synchro, or Xyz monster, and return it to their extra deck in order to destroy a monster of the same special summon type that's on the field. And that brings us to the Light and Darkness cards. For support, we have Duality and Shadow's Light. Duality lets you tribute a light or dark monster on the field to special summon a light or dark monster from your hand or extra deck with the same type and level, but the opposite attribute. You can banish this card from the grave to target both a light and a dark attribute monster that's in there with it, and shuffle them both back into the deck, then draw 1 card. And Shadow's Light targets a dark monster and lets you special summon a light monster in the deck or the extra deck with the same type and level. This card can be banished from the grave to give yourself an extra normal summon for the turn, provided that what you summon was either a light or dark attribute monster. Sadly, using either of these effects gives up your battle phase for the turn. But with all this light and darkness talk, we haven't really talked about the monsters themselves. Black Dragon Collapse Serpent, White Dragon Wyver Burster, and the original Light and Darkness Dragon. These were Chazz's signature cards in the GX manga, and remain personal favorites of mine to this day. Collapse Serpent and Wyver Burster can both only be summoned by banishing a monster of the opposite attribute from the grave, and if either of them are sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add the other one from the deck to your hand. And Light and Darkness Dragon, Chazz's Girl Friday, cannot be special summoned at all. She is both a light and dark attribute monster when she's on the field, and she automatically negates card effects once per chain by giving up 500 attack and defense points. When this card is sent to the grave, it can destroy all the cards you control to special summon a monster in your graveyard. And then there's Chaos Star Source Dragon, which is summoned by fusing any dragon monster with either a light or dark dragon monster. When it's fusion summoned, you can target enemy cards for every light or dark monster that was used as its material, so in this case it would be either 1 or 2 cards, and destroy them. If this card is banished, you can change one level 4 light or dark dragon monster you control to level 8. And that does it for the side deck. Moving on to the extra deck, let's start with the oddballs who don't necessarily fit into our broader archetypes. We have Magnum the Reliever, Saryuja, Skull Dread, and Daigusto Phoenix. Magnum the Reliever, who I stylistically consider to be part of Chazz's Hellish archetype, can be fused using an extra deck monster and a monster in your hand. It can take a polymerization or a fusion card in the grave and move it back to the bottom of your deck. Then draw one card. When another card or its effect is activated, you can banish one polymerization or fusion spell card from your grave to destroy one card on the field. Saryuja Skull Dread is a Link 4 monster requiring 2 or more different monsters to Link summon. It gains effect for each material monster that was used. If it has 2 or more materials, it gives 300 points to any monster summoned to a zone that it points to. If it has 3 or more materials, you can special summon a monster from the hand during each main phase. And if it has 4 materials, it lets you draw 4 cards when it's Link summoned, then place 3 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck. And Daigusto Phoenix is a rank 2 Xyz monster who can detach a material to target one of your wind monsters and let them attack twice during each battle phase. So really good armed dragon support. For the Union monsters, we have VW Tiger Catapult, XYZ Dragon Cannon, and VWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon. VW Tiger Catapult combines V Tiger Jet and W Wing Catapult. It can discard a card to change an enemy monster's battle position. XYZ Dragon Cannon combines the X, Y, and Z Union Machine monsters in this profile. It can't be special summoned from the grave, but it can let you discard a card to destroy an enemy card. And VWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon combines both of these monsters. It can target and banish an enemy card once per turn. And when it declares an attack on an enemy monster, it can change that monster's battle position. And believe it or not, VWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon can combine with Armed Dragon level 7, or in our case, Armed Dragon Thunder level 7, to summon Armed Dragon Catapult Cannon. This monster prevents the opponent from activating cards or effects if they have cards with the same name banished from play. During the enemy's turn, it can also banish a card from your deck or extra deck to banish all cards on the enemy field or graveyard. And to close out the Armed Dragon archetype, we've officially got Dark Armed, the Dragon of Annihilation, and unofficially have Blaze, Supreme Ruler of all Dragons. Not really an Armed Dragon card, but we're gonna go with it. Dark Armed is a rank 7 Xyz monster requiring 2 materials. It can also be Xyz summoned using one level 5 or higher Dark Attribute Dragon if you have exactly 5 Dark monsters in your graveyard. This card can detach a material to banish one card in your grave and destroy one card on your opponent's field, though it can't attack for the rest of the turn. And Blaze, Supreme Ruler of all Dragons, feels very much like a combination of Chazz's Chthonian and Armed Dragon archetypes. It's a rank 7 Xyz monster that can detach a material to destroy one card in your hand or on your field, and one enemy card on the field. If this card is in the grave, you can banish a total of 2 fire and or dragon monsters from your hand and or graveyard to special summon it back to the field, but it returns to the extra deck the next time it leaves the field. Finishing out the Light and Darkness monsters, we have Light End Dragon and Dark End Dragon, as well as Light and Darkness Dragon Lord. Light End Dragon and Dark End Dragon are both synchro monsters, which have no tuners to summon in this profile. So why are they here? Well, 1, they serve as summoning fodder for Light End Sublimation Dragon and Dark End Evaporation Dragon, their newer main deck counterparts, but they can also be summoned using the effects of Duality and Shadow's End. So not your typical synchro summoning inclusion, but still useful. Light End Dragon can give up attack and defense points to weaken another monster it battles, while Dark End Dragon can give up points to destroy enemy monsters. And Light and Darkness Dragon Lord fuses a level 8 Light and a level 8 Dark Dragon monster with each other. It's both a Light and Dark attribute monster when it's on the field, and, once per chain, if a card effect is activated, this card loses 1,000 attack and defense points to negate that activation. If this monster is destroyed, you can special summon a dragon monster in your graveyard. And that just leaves us with our friends, the Ojamas. We have 2 Ojama fusions, Ojama Knight and Ojama King. Ojama Knight fuses 2 Ojama monsters and allows you to deactivate 2 enemy monster zones so that they can't be used. And Ojama King fuses Ojama's yellow, green, and black and deactivates 3 enemy card zones. And last, but certainly not least, give it up for the one, the only, Ojama Emperor. This is a Link 3 monster that requires 3 beast monsters to summon. It gains 3,000 attack points and cannot be destroyed by card effects if Ojama Country is on the field. Your opponent takes any battle damage that you would have taken from attacks on this card. And you can target 1 non-Link Ojama monster in your grave and special summon it, but for the rest of this turn, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for fusion monsters. And that brings us to the end of this Chaz Princeton deck profile. Special mention does go out to Armed Neos, which combines Jaden's elemental hero Neos with Chaz's Armed Dragon cards. Definitely something we might see Chaz use in a modern tag team duel with his rival, but not a solo card for sure. But what do you think of the cards in this modern Chaz Princeton deck profile? Are these the cards that he'd be using today, or am I way off base? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. A huge shout out to Wham Bam Duel for helping me out with this deck profile. If you want to use it for yourself, it is available over on YGO Pro, and you can view a guide on how to use it most effectively over on Wham Bam's channel. Links to both of those things down below in the description. Check back next week as we continue with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rivals with the Master of Faster himself, Jack Atlas. Hit the subscribe bell thing if you want to see that, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!